we got a guest coming on right now that I'm sure has some great thoughts on all this. So go ahead.
Yeah, let's
Grant.
talk a little bit more about Chris Davis and the O's. Let's welcome in Roch Kubatko from the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network, otherwise known as Masson. And Roch, thanks for calling in. And so you wrote about Chris Davis in your School of Rock on the Masson website. And just a little bit more now on what Chris's approach is going to be here in dealing with the shift. He shifted against the fourth most in Major League Baseball last year.
Yeah, we talked to him at FanFest. He said, yeah, I've been, working out with the new hitting coach, Scott Kubatko. I'm working on my bunting. And we all kind of laughed. And we realized later, oh, he's serious. And he told me again last week that he seriously is working more on his bunting. Not that he's going to do that all the time, but it is a weapon against the shift. And he said it was really frustrating for him that he would constantly hit balls that should have gone into shallow right field, but the second baseman ended up catching chest high. And he couldn't seem to do anything about it. And he realizes that in certain situations now, if they're going to give him that base hit to the left side where it's unoccupied in the infield, he's got to go ahead and take it. Now, he's not going to do that, let's say, late in the game in a one-run game where one swing of the bat can tie it up. But there are certain situations that if they're giving it to him, he's scuffling a little bit, they need a base runner, he will go ahead and lay down a bunt. And as we've seen, not everybody can do that. So he's been working on it quite a bit in the offseason. He said more than he ever has before. So we'll see how much of a weapon it actually is for him. But he is looking to do that. The big thing with Chris is he's healthy. He had that oblique injury last year. Tried to play through it for most of the season. And I'm not a doctor, but you can't play through an oblique. I mean, you can only rest that thing. And he was not able to drive the ball the other way, left and left center, which he did frequently when he hit the 53 home runs in 2013. Pitchers were busting him inside. And he was defenseless against it. And he hit 196. But I think the big key for him is being healthy and then also trying to find a way to work against that shift so he's not constantly hitting the ball into somebody's glove.
Hey, what did he have to say about the suspension and living through that, watching his team play in the postseason? I'm curious what his thoughts were there.
Yeah, I mean, he freely admits he had a lapse in judgment, and, he's apologized for it. He apologized to his teammates. He didn't get the exemption for the Adderall, and he'd had it in the past. Now, why he wasn't given it last year, we don't know. He doesn't know, but he was able to get it. And I've talked to people that say he clearly does need it. And he stresses it was never about baseball. It's not about performance enhancement. He was diagnosed where he needs to have that just for his everyday life. And it was a real struggle for him last year. So you have that, and you have the oblique injury, and everything that was kind of coming down on him, and he wasn't contributing to the team, and I think he had kind of a panic moment, ended up being suspended. He still has one game left of that suspension. We have to remember the Orioles technically have 41 on their 40-man roster. He can work out in spring training. He can play in the games, but he's got to sit out the opener. So the Orioles will carry a player just for one day and then send them out. But he has apologized for it. Seems like he's been forgiven. His teammates, quietly, they supported him publicly. Quietly, there were a lot of guys, veterans in that clubhouse, who were really disappointed with the way things happened. But he's been forgiven. He was with them at the championship series, even though he couldn't play. And, they're united with him.
Roch, there's been a lot of talk about what the Orioles have not done this offseason, but they are going to get two players, key players back from injury coming up here this season. And let's start with Manny Machado, who has had to deal with some adversity now, both in terms of on the field, but also some of the issues that came, they were baseball related, but things that you don't necessarily want to be dealing with the Josh Donaldson situation and throwing the bat and all that stuff. So where do you think Machado is, and how important do you think spring is going to be down in Sarasota for him?
Well, it's very important, but I saw him at the mini camp in January, and he was very excited. He said he was performing all baseball activities. He said he's full go for spring training, which makes him think he'll be full go for opening day. There's not a lot of question in his mind whether he's going to be ready. I mean, he's doing everything right now. He was running sprints to first base. He was running from home plate to second, simulating doubles, fielding the ball, doing everything he's supposed to do. So he's feeling really good physically. And he said he told his wife, and he's recently married, he said, I've got like 2 brand new knees now. He's had surgery on both of them. And, he feels like a new man. As for the other stuff, we have to kind of remember, Buck reminds us that in some ways he's still a kid. He's still 22 at this point. He just had a really bad weekend in that series against Oakland. There were a couple things that were kind of unmanny-like. And it was addressed, again, in a clubhouse meeting. The veterans spoke up. I think Nick Markakis did most of the talking there. And, it was explained to him, that's not how we do things. We have something good going here. We're trying to win this thing. We can't have this kind of distraction. And that's been put behind them.
What about Matt Wieters as well?
Yeah, with Matt, it's a real question. Right now, it's like so far so good. Last I heard, he'd extended his throwing program in Atlanta. He's been working with a physical therapist to 150 feet. He thinks he can be ready for opening day, but he has no way of knowing, as he said, till he actually gets behind the plate, starts making throws, starts playing in games, and then to see whether there are any kind of setbacks at all. If he's not ready, he's going to be really close. And Buck Showalter said that. They're certainly not going to push him because they feel like, there's no rush to the 162-game season. So it's one of those, again, so far so good things. But in the meantime, they had 5 catchers on their 40-man roster at one time, which was 2 more than any other team in the majors. They're down to 3, but they've got like 6 on their camp roster. So they're taking all the precautions just in case he isn't ready to cover themselves. So really, that's going to be kind of a daily story this spring. That's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, storyline of camp is will Matt Wieters be ready? And we're going to be annoying him by waiting in his locker every day to see how he's feeling and what his progress is like.
Hey, so we saw Steve Pearce last year come on. Jonathan Scope, I think, is going to be that guy maybe this year. But I'm curious, we saw the Orioles roster. They didn't do a whole lot. Who's that guy that Buck's got tucked underneath his sleeve that all of a sudden you're going to say, see, I told you that this kid was going to be our next one that helped us get over the hurdle? Who is that player, do you think?
I don't know whether he qualifies necessarily as a kid, but Travis Snyder, that acquisition from the Pirates probably went unnoticed, but he's the guy that right now, at least, he's wearing Nelson Cruz's old number and he's playing Nick Markakis' old position. So welcome to the Orioles. There's no pressure there at all. But they really like him. They're looking at what he did the second half of the season in Pittsburgh, and I think he's kind of on the uprise here. And if they got him at the right time, it's all coming together for him. He's a former first-round pick, and Dan Duquette loves those former #1 picks, has a few of them on the roster that he signs from other organizations. So they think that he's really ready to have kind of a big season for them and live up to that potential. And even though people are kind of overlooking him, he could emerge as the everyday right fielder. They think he could play against lefties and righties. They like his defense and right. Wayne Kirby said he's watched film of him. Wayne, coaches the outfield. You think he's going to be just fine in right field. So they're really excited about him. But if he ends up being more of a platoon-type guy, they do have a Steve Pearce who could play right field. He can play left. He can play first base. He can DH. Very valuable. But Snyder's the guy they felt like that was a really good pickup for them.
Roch Kubatko, a good friend of ours here at the MLB Network, covers the O's for Masson. Roch, enjoy Sarasota.
Thank you very much.